Hi everyone, today we did get a little bit of a resumption here right to the highs from the Tuesday session. That was the all-time high previously, and we are right at those wick highs. You could argue we threw some wicks to a slightly higher high, but really we're right at it. Is this the zone where we start to pull back a little bit more? I was looking for a bigger rejection from this 625.90 area, but it didn't work out that way. We pushed through there. Is this the continuation move? Let's take a look at all the charts and the data. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. In news today, we did get Netflix earnings and they did beat pretty well here. You can see growth of 16% in second quarter, very strong. On the revenue growth, 11.08 billion for second quarter versus the estimate 11.07, so very strong there. Still down a little bit in the after hours, nothing crazy though. Either way, very strong. Beat on earnings per share, beat on revenues. Everything says things are still going well for Netflix. But the thing here is the growth is not accelerating at this point, so a lot of this is priced in. Is that going to be the case for a lot of these big tech companies? I think that is kind of what the market is worried about, at least for now. Moving over to fear and greed, slight step to 75 from a 74, really no movement here. Back into greed on momentum, strength and breadth were both in extreme greed, but you can see breadth here was turning down a little bit. It'll be interesting to see if that continues while this rally is going. Put call ratio was already at one of those peak low levels, and that continues to go up as markets are going higher. That's not what you want to see there either. Volatility spiked up, didn't see any follow through on that today, and then safe haven demand still headed higher as you would expect, still extreme greed here. And then looking at junk bonds, still at a very low level. So is it a time to be long markets? I would say probably not. If you're still in it, maybe you're still holding, but according to this indicator, you should be really taking profits soon, if not already. Moving over to earnings. Earnings was pretty much green across the board. Only one red number on the major companies. You can see very good there for just about everywhere. PepsiCo did very well. Netflix, we'll take a look at those charts later. And then you can see for tomorrow, American Express, 3M, and SLB. Moving over to the economic calendar, CPI for the Eurozone came in line with expectations. Everything's good there, but retail sales a little better than expectations. That is partly why we saw rallies today, in my opinion, and that was really good, especially off of the back of the really bad numbers we saw in the previous, down almost a full 1% there, and then we saw the expectation 0.1, got a good read at 0.6, so nice move higher on the consumer data. Fed balance sheet continues to sell slowly, selling off a little bit more there. Atlanta Fed GDP a little lower than expectations, but pretty good. And now everything did see some bounces from this data. Moving over to Max Pain. Max Pain did move up a little bit here to 610 from that kind of 605 area, but stock price all the way at 625. Do we get a push down into this Max Pain expiration? I wouldn't expect to get too much lower than 620, but even 620 would be quite a bit lower from current if we could get there. Tons of options, 2.6 million almost. Put call ratio is still pretty high. There are a lot of puts in the markets, not a lot of calls here. So I would argue that this is probably going to hold up okay. Maybe down to 620, between 620 and 625 makes sense to me. But do we see that fall into the 600 area based on this profile? I would say probably not. Moving over to the charts, looking at the S&Ps here on the daily chart, you can see nice day up 0.61, back above that high from the outside reversal day. So does that invalidate? You could argue absolutely it does, but you can also look here at the SMA. We did break down here, big move here, retest. Do we get the rejection on the retest? Still not completely out of the woods on the indicators, but the close above that body of that candle, you could argue, is definitely an invalidation. I can understand why somebody would be looking at it that way. And then looking at it here on the hourly chart, it doesn't look as strong. You can see the pullback to the 200 here, the rally out to that high. A little bit of a stop hunt, maybe slightly higher high. It doesn't look super convincing to me. This looks like slow grinding price action here. Do we get some movement on Max Pain tomorrow? Maybe. Definitely want to look at that volume. You can see here on that spike down, did see a ton of volume there. Probably some of what is driving this rally here, taking out a lot of that move, but either way, slightly bullish day, and based off of the structure here, you now have support in here around 626, and then my level 625.90. As long as you're above those, you can stay bullish. Moving over to the Tasty charts here, we did push through that upper ATR band here in the after hours. You can see pushed right to that upper ATR band. 628.30 or so was that zone. We pushed right to it, 627.98. Back into bullish conditions, broke through that trailing stop at 625. So back into bullish, good volume coming through on that push as well. Everything says this should resume to bullish. We're just slightly above this previous high as well. So again, flipping to bullish here after we thought we might have seen a bigger breakdown through here, held this zone, and then ended up pushing higher. Moving over to the Qs here on the daily chart, you can see we did get a push there. Really nice, honestly, 0.81 right to the trend line. Did stall out at the trend line here on the daily chart. A little bit of a different look on the hourly. This kind of looks more choppy here, but that trend line continues to be resistance, and that's where we are right now. If we do get the push through there to that next zone, that's going to take you up to 568.21 potentially. You can see this is truly a higher high here on the NASDAQ, and really this is being driven by NVIDIA and Microsoft. Both of those stocks are very powerful. They continue to be very strong here, and the NASDAQ, of course, is going to be overweight those stocks, so very strong momentum stepping to bullish. RSI massively overbought once again at a 72.04 here on the daily chart. Pretty much the same region we got here last time. 71 got here 72.9, and we are once again here into that very overbought condition. Can we continue to rally like this? I would argue probably not, but I didn't think today would look as strong as it did either, so continues to look bullish. You can trade it that way. Resistance is the trend line, support 557.29. Moving over to the Qs here on the 4-hour, pushing right to that second ATR band. 562 was the level. We pushed right to it and stopped. That was the resistance here, and we are right there once again, continuing to show resistance there. Still bullish conditions. Your trailing stop did step up a little bit. 553.98 continues to look good there, but the bigger change is that flip back to bullish. We got it here on that first candle really of the day, pushed through it, and then continued up to that upper ATR band, continued to be resistance there. 562.36 was the zone, but this looks a lot more bullish now. These are starting to trend back up to the upside once again. Do we see a pullback like this where we kind of pull back mid-range and then continue up to some higher highs, or is it going to reject more powerfully from here? That is the question. Basically no volume on the day either. That is definitely not what you want to see. Do we see a little bit more selling into that max pain finish? That is the concern, at least for now. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow, both of these having a nice move here. You can see the Russell pushing back through that trend line here, back to the high from that engulfing pattern. So again, a little bit of an invalidation. You could argue this is just consolidation as this kind of widens here. Either way, your high is still 226 on this peak level here, hasn't gotten through there yet. Momentum stepping back to bullish. RSI still below the SMA, still big volume on the last 3 days. Is this the slight pullback that we needed to get some bigger pushes? Still looks pretty strong here, drifting higher on the after hours there for the Russell. And then looking at this Dow, is this a bull flag? Is this potentially a breakout here? We did get above it pretty strong here on the 10th. We ended up pulling back there, but this is a nice close above it. We're right at the level, 445.16. We're right on it to the penny after hours, closed above it during the session. If this breaks out here, that could be a powerful resumption, at least to that 448 area. And then if you get through there, there should be a really powerful move. Does look like a bull flag now, even more on the setup. Moving over to the Mag 7, the Mag 7 still refuses to move up just 0.25% here across these 7 stocks. And that is with NVIDIA doing really well and Microsoft continuing to hang in there pretty well, but we just cannot see a strong continuation. Got a really powerful move through here, as you would expect. Really grinding price action in here. I would still say this is continuing to look like it's going to fade here. And I do believe that it will eventually. I think I was just a little bit early. Still like the price action there from the Tuesday, which was an outside reversal day. There's definitely sellers in this area for sure. We haven't gotten back there on the Mag 7, and that is something that I'm still watching. And then looking at Netflix here, you can see this continues to look really strong, structurally very bullish here. This is the daily chart. Continues to go higher seemingly every day. Had a couple of dips in here back through February when everything else was dipping, but held structure, double bottom in here, big rally out, continued on to some higher highs. And then looking at that after hours price action, really not a ton of movement. Threw a wick to a little bit higher high and then pulled back to the trend line in here. Trend line is sitting around 1246, your support around 1200. If it holds structure, then you're looking for a push back to these all-time highs around 1338. If you can get through there, your upper trend line would be around 1414. So those are the structures you're looking for, but it does seem to be slowing down at least a little bit in this zone. Moving over to Apple and Microsoft. Apple continues to look terrible. I continue to say this is likely to sell off from here. We've had a really powerful market. Things have been super bullish, and Apple just cannot go higher, continues to suffer at this 211.55 area. These longer term trend lines continue to get closer every day. Momentum probably going to flip bearish tomorrow, and another test here today and more selling on the day. versus Microsoft was grinding along this trend line. Big breakout here, 1.2%, continues to be an absolute rocket ship. Momentum bullish, RSI bullish, everything on Microsoft continues to be super, super bullish. Price discovery, new all-time highs. Moving over to Tesla and NVIDIA. Tesla is once again rejecting from this mid zone like we thought that it would. Touch the level there. High of day was 324.34. My level 324.47. So we're going to call that a touch, and then a rejection from that zone. 144 EMA also there at 324.75. Pulled back here to the 200. If this breaks structure here, look out below. This is likely to go at least to 290, if not as low as these lower consolidations in here around 232. So something to watch for there. Otherwise, NVIDIA, a new all-time high, up another 1%, continues to be an absolute rocket ship. And like I said, Microsoft and NVIDIA absolutely carrying the team over the last couple days. And then moving over to Amazon and Alphabet, these looked okay, not as good as you would want them to look if this rally is going to continue. You got Amazon down, Amazon up a third to the trend line after breaking down. You could call this a rejection / retest. Does this pull back to the 21 tomorrow, down at 219? That is probably what I would be looking for. Otherwise, if we can get back above the trend here, which tomorrow is going to be up around 225, then you're looking for the upper trend line around 228. Right now, momentum bearish, RSI bearish, and then you can see Alphabet continues to struggle at this key level, 185.22. This was the consolidation low before the bigger breakdown. You can see the key level there, and also see this kind of head and shoulders pattern, left shoulder, head, right shoulder before this breakdown here. Key level, if this is the broader head and shoulders pattern on Alphabet, this is likely to pull back quite a lot down to that 150 area. So I would be out of Alphabet here unless we can get a close above 185.22. If you can, your next level is 193.31. Moving over to staples and discretionaries, we did have staples outperforming quite a lot here today. That's a little bit of risk off. We did go up together, but not as strong on the discretionaries. The support was 219.18, held that level yesterday on a closing basis, tested that area, and then bounced a little bit here today off of that zone. So again, not as strong as staples, which continues to hold this very long consolidation in here. You can see the lows were somewhere between 79 and 80, and then we did touch that zone again, and now we're pushing back up there to the high of this range around 82.50, maybe as high as 83.20 or so. But retail sales pushing this higher makes sense that it did go a little bit higher today after the kind of scare that we got on the previous numbers. Moving over to breadth. Breadth did get a nice continuation higher here. I wouldn't say we're completely out of the woods. 20-day still hanging in this consolidation, so not broken there, but this is concerning still for me on the 50-day. You had this very long consolidation still below the 55. Do we retest this zone, lower high setup, continuation lower over the next day or two? I still think that is absolutely a possibility and something that I am watching for here. You can also see the RSI just continues to downtrend while the breadth is actually hovering in this area. So I still think there's a little bit of a warning sign here on 50-day. 20-day, really no movement. Tested the low, got a bounce off of that area. Moving over to the dollar. Dollar got a nice bounce off of that 21, pushed back to that 55 EMA, and then we are starting to sell a little bit from there. So this is likely a bit of a top. We'll look for that lower high. We'll look for that higher low setup, maybe even a double bottom, but a higher low setup in here would be absolutely awesome. That's what we would want to see on the dollar, and that's a trade that I would absolutely look to see. If I could get into, probably would have to do dollar futures or maybe one of the dollar pairs, but bullish dollar if we do see a nice bounce here and then a continuation through these highs here. Moving over to bonds, J&K had a nice move up here today on this news, a little bit of a risk on move like we expected. 96.51 on that good retail sales. I've been bullish on bonds for a long time, and I do expect this to go. This does look a little bull flaggy as well, similar to what we're seeing on the Dow. And this looks like a nice hold here and a push through that level. And then looking at TLT, basically held, basically unchanged, down just 2 cents on the day. Quick rejection here. Is this the higher low setup continuation move that we're looking for? I think this is certainly starting to be a potential bottom. And like I said, still bullish for the medium to long term. Momentum stepping towards bullish there as well. Like to see that. Want to see another step down tomorrow and the next day, and then you can expect this to kind of flow here back to the bull side. So some opportunity here. Need a little bit more confirmation, but still looks good. Moving over to the VIX here. The VIX touched this zone yesterday between this 18 and 20 area. I thought we'd get a little bit more continuation there, and we just didn't. Looks like we're pulling back into this range around the 1580 area. Momentum stepping down, RSI stepping down. Another down move here for the VIX, so short-lived on the spike. And adding a trend line here, I guess I should have guessed that this is going to happen. So if this structure continues to hold here, somewhere in mid-August, we're going to see this kind of bigger spike up, and we'll get a change in structure on the VIX. But for now, seems like we're getting this kind of falling wedge pattern, which eventually will be a spike up, but for now it's not. Moving over to my account, I did get squeezed a little bit on the day, as you would expect. I was a little bit short going into the day, lost about 600 on that, which was a bit of a bummer. Didn't expect to see that much of a rally out of today, and I did expect some rejections, and we just didn't get it. We broke out, everything looked bullish, and that stopped me out of that position. Didn't want to continue to lose money there, but annoying, a little bit annoying. Didn't want to flip bullish either because you're at such a point of resistance, kind of a pivot point there. So I would argue kind of neutral here, not enough for me to jump back into the bull side, but definitely aggressive enough for me to get squeezed out of the bear side. So just watching neutral. I still lean to the bear side, but you have to respect the price action. It was very powerful today, and the data continues to be good. It'll be interesting to see what the Mag 7 does with earnings over the next couple of weeks, but for now, price action is still very bullish. Let me know down in the comments section what you think of Netflix earnings. Is that going to be the indication of most of earnings this season, or is this just an isolated effect here with Netflix? Can big tech continue to massively outperform and then we get massive beats to the upside? Or is this earnings season going to pull us back down to earth when it comes to names like Microsoft and NVIDIA? Let me know. Otherwise, like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video. Make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.